Supair Delight 4 and the Delight 4 Sport. They're Supair's semi-light pod harnesses. Weight on the ground, they're due to the relatively lightweight, about 4 kilos, and the strap system, which is off your legs. They're really, really comfortable.
I agree. What I find is that the seat plate actually is going vertical. It's I don't know if you found that, but as well, it's just sitting very comfortably and out of the way, so you don't feel like you've got a seat plate bashing against the back of your legs. I don't really feel like I notice I'm wearing it, actually, even with full kit and everything in there, water and all my bits and pieces, and obviously it's got the reserve and everything. It doesn't feel heavy or uncomfortable. Some harnesses you just actually it's a very nice weight. I think the weight of the whole harness overall is very good. You've been flying the Delight 4 standard, Delight 4, and I've been flying...
You've got my harness.
Yes, we're around the wrong way. And I've been flying the Delight 4 Sport, and we've been flying them actually since
You've been flying size medium, haven't you?
Yes, I'm the medium. Oh yes, and you're the large.
And I'm in the size large.
Yes. And actually, the medium is spot on for me. I mean, I used to fly...
You can see why a little bit when we sit here.
Yes.
Although Nancy's 5'10" and I'm 6 foot, and Nancy's longer in the leg, but I'm longer in the body.
Yes.
And that's seems to be the main deciding factor, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. And so the medium fits me very well, and it's the main harness, really, the main pod harness that I've been flying now since it was launched. So taking off with the Delight 4, it definitely has a definite way of getting in, and so I put the bungee through my right foot, and then you're just lifting up the speed bag and then hooking your left foot onto the speed bag, and it's easy peasy. So
I found without the bungee, if I forget to put the bungee on, or if I tried it without it, kind of a little tricky getting my foot in. So that's one thing I will say about the Delight 4 compared to the Delight 3, even its predecessor. I found that a little bit easier get in. So
actually, I think it's quite different to Delight 3. I think I've never needed to use a bungee on my foot. I've always just been able to get into the pod harnesses, but use the bungee, it makes it smooth. You don't have to worry about it. You're in, you're off, you're away.
Absolutely. And not just for the Delight 4, but any pod, if you find sometimes you're taking off and you just struggle to get in, then a bungee on there is a really simple and good solution for that.
Yeah. Talking about the Delight 4 on the ground, actually something that you sometimes notice with harnesses when you're ground handling or leaning forward or just pushing down, when you're sort of waiting at launch, waiting for the moment to launch, or you're just generally ground handling, sometimes you find that the waist strap is digging in, and you're effectively getting a kind of pain in your upper stomach, chest.
You can end up really bruised,
yeah. And actually, it's very important to note that both of us have found with the Delight 4 that it doesn't do that. So the way the straps and everything are positioned, you're not getting any interference with your stomach and the straps.
Now, talking about taking off, the way that the seat is designed and the way that the Delight 4 sits, it's very easy to get back in the seat and sit back in it.
I found the same. It's certainly, it's not something you kind of think, oh, I need to shuffle and I'm not quite getting back in. It's your feet are on the speed bag, pushing against the foot plate, and you're just back into the harness. So I mean, this is where a harness that fits you well makes a difference.
Yes, I feel the same. The comfort is really, really good on the Delight 4. Under your bum and around your back, really good support and very nice comfort. It's the right sort of balance, I feel, of not too hard and firm, but not sort of saggy. It's got a nice sort of firm feeling, and it holds you really nicely. I don't feel like I have any pressure points with it.
No.
Anywhere. It's got a very stiffened back all the way up the back, and so it does feel really supportive on you. That's particularly good for me. I've got quite a long back and a bit of a sort of abused sore back, so it's it's really good, really important to me to have very good support on my back, and the Delight 4 is excellent for that. An important point I feel with the Delight 4, which is very similar to the Delight 3 and the Delight 2, is you were talking about the seat board.
Yes.
So it's got a mini seat board, they call it. It's kind of like a half-size seat board, let's call it. And I do think it's Supair, as far as I know, were the first people to start, first paragliding harness manufacturers to start doing that. It's also, you can remove it if you want, but it's just best flown like that. And I feel like it's a really good sort of compromise or a good balance. It's kind of like just right. You've got a nice seat board that gives you that extra feeling of the control on the seat board, but without having a big heavy seat board. So let's talk some more about the flying and what the Delight 4 is like to fly with.
Yes.
So I feel that the Delight 4 has got a particularly very comfortable and quite stable feeling to it in flight. So you really notice it when you're flying in active turbulent conditions, when you're getting rocked around if it's quite turbulent. A design that Supair have used a bit with their straps where it sort of comes into a sort of V. So there's a nice freedom of movement in the first kind of, I don't know exactly, 20-30 degrees, like that. But when you then try to go, if you try and go more than that to a sort of extreme kind of angle, then the strap sort of counter to that side kind of locks out and stops you, basically. I find that's sort of similar to the LT Rando Light 2, but less so.
Actually, for me, I barely noticed the leg straps between my thighs. The Outer Rando Light 2, it was something that was quite noticeable, and you would really feel like, oh, I'm turning and I'm feeling pressure. I don't get the pressure with the Delight 4.
I think for most pilots, they're going to find the level of weight shift that you have is totally fine, and for cross-country flying, it's fine. I think there's going to be some pilots, maybe 20% or something of them, who particularly like chucking their gliders around and like very weight shifty harnesses. I think actually the Delight 4 is arguably the best option as your first pod, and that's primarily because of that great stability that the harness has. It's got a very good stability, plus with a mini seat board.
Ease of use as well. It's
general ease of use. The only slight little tiny fly in the ointment is the getting your foot in the speed bag, but the bungee solves that. Let's talk a bit more about flying. Just soaring on the ridge and then nice thermaling. How did you find it, handling wise?
Well, you know that thing when you're soaring and you're doing the sort of tilt in but tilt away from the slope sort of thing.
Oh, so, yes. Some call that high siding.
High siding. Yes, actually, of course it's called high siding. So I like high siding quite a lot, and it gives me that sort of feeling like I'm in a race car or something. And and the Delight 4 is lovely for it, essentially, is what I want to say. So yeah, I feel like I can really get over into the side of the harness, but then also still lean away, so you can really just get that nice soaring beat in. So yeah.
You mean when you're working along the ridge and there's bits of lift to go and you're working out in and out and you have to just do little adjustments?
You're sort of leaning in, you're leaning away, and you just it's those little adjustments which actually you take for granted when you're trying to do that, but this harness handles it very well. Some won't let you do that so much. They'll restrict you from getting where you want to be. But I find with this that it's matching where I want to be to get into that angle. So, I've actually flown the Delight 4 with a lot of different gliders. We mentioned already how obviously different gliders will have turn more, bank more, and what I've found with the Delight 4 is that generally when I want to get the glider to crank around, it does let me.
If you're trying to do great big wing overs or stuff like that, then it feels a little bit limiting, but when you're in rough turbulent air being chucked about, then it kind of stabilizes things out. It just makes things more comfortable. And actually I think that's one of the key words that comes to mind for me with the Delight 4, is that both because of the actual comfort of it, the comfort of sitting, it's very comfortable and just relaxing and easy to fly in for hours, I find. And but also because it smooths stuff out. So you can call it dampens, but it's also smoothing stuff out. It sort of smooths out the roughness and the bumps, and so it just leads to quite a high level of comfort. So during the speed system?
Using generally the speed system, the first thing to comment on is how light it is, how easy it is. It's got Harken 29mm pulleys, exceptionally good pulleys, and it's noticeable. You put the speed bar on and it's very easy.
Obviously it will depend on the glider, but if you have the same glider, which I have done exactly that, had the same glider and flying it with 4 different harnesses, it's very noticeable with the Delight 4.
Yeah, and that's some harnesses you find that when you go on speed bar, you get a bit of a weird digging in, where the pulleys are kind of going into
your back.
Yeah, and this is it's nowhere near that. It's
I don't notice it at all.
No,
actually, with it,
coming into land, all relatively easy, but actually I would say you have to be quite mindful of coming out of the pod. So it's just with all pods you want to be ready good and early. If you're getting low to the ground, it's get those toes poking through the top of the speed bag, at top of the foot plate, get 1 foot ready. But what they've actually done with the Delight 4 over something like, say, the Delight 3, I always remember it had a slight opening.
You could have a small gap, and quite a few pods have that. They have a little bit of,
just
you can have a bit of a gap.
Quite gel.
Some do.
So the Delight 4, actually, it's gelling very well and actually coming over very nicely. So it's all very neat and streamlined.
Yeah. So what I think it is, when I look at the pod, there's quite a lot of overlap between the speed bag flaps, as it were. So anyone flying the pod will know that you need to poke out 1 foot first and then get the other foot out. And it's generally the opposite of how you get in. So it said before about how you put your right leg forward, get your left foot in. It's best to go left foot in, and therefore as you come out of the speed bag, it works best to get your left foot out first, poke the toe out. Like that. And a tip for you, which applies to all pods, and we were just talking about, but with a Delight 4, because it's got more overlap, is to just slightly open your knees a bit like that, and bring your feet just slightly in, and with a bit of practice you'll work out what's the right amount, and then that just opens a little window, gap for you to go through, and then you can poke your put out your toe like that and put it there.
So you're ready,
That's it, and then you're ready to take the other foot out and step out nice and easy.
Yes. I'm just going to move on to storage. The storage in the back is quite different. So with the sport version,
you might think, looking at the sport version, it's got bigger storage, but
indeed, no. So actually inside it has a tube with a drawstring. So you put I put my rucksack in there, and it fits very nicely for a rucksack, and then a few other odds and sods on the top. And if you were going to put your water system in there, obviously that's where you put it as well, and you've got the routing for the drinking tube. But in the back of here, it's the whole space, so it's like a cavern.
The storage, I think the storage in the Delight 4 Sport is pretty normal compared to other pods like the Delight 3 or other ones. I think it's pretty normal like that, and it certainly, and it isn't big. It's not a very sort of big storage area, but it's quite normal and it's totally fine. The reason that it has less space is because to make that fairing, it actually has to have almost like the construction of like a wing inside it to make the aerofoil, the tail inflate really well. And actually, while I mention that, it does inflate particularly well. The Delight 4 Sport, the tail on it, you'll notice quite a few other pods with tails, they take a while to inflate and they kind of flap around in the wind for a while. I found the Delight 4 Sport inflates really quickly, and it's rigid, it's quite erect. I think the key differentiator between the two is the storage space. So the storage space in the Delight 4 Sport is very good. The storage space in the Delight 4 Standard is exceptional. It's really large. You can fit a lot in there. It's got really a lot of space. I think some pilots thinking of hike and fly in Vol Biv, even though it's not an ultralight pod, but wanting a semi-light pod that they want lots of storage space, go for the Delight 4. And that's it. So if your emphasis, like Nancy says, is really on XC performance, and you want to get every little bit of extra performance out, and then you just maybe like the tail fin thing, that's the reason to go for that. And basically if you just want more storage space, that's the way I feel.
Agreed.
Then go for that's all folks. And as always, we're out testing gear all the time just to get to know it really well, so we can best advise you on the right and best gear for you, which we do through our Flybubble match service, which you can read about and sign up to on our website. That's all. I think we're done. It's a wrap.
We look forward to seeing you in the next Flybubble video.
Bye.